What begins as a simple family visit soon unravels into a life-changing discovery. When Thuy visits her brother Toan and his wife Diem, she immediately notices Diem's unusual symptoms. Toan fears illness, but Thuy's sharp observation suggests something far more extraordinary: pregnancy. Shock, hope, and fear intertwine as the couple face the possibility of a new chapter they had never imagined. Their journey to the clinic brings both suspense and tears of joy as an unexpected heartbeat changes everything. Don't miss this moving story. Subscribe now and follow every twist, every secret, and every emotion in their unforgettable journey. It was late in the afternoon when Thuy, Toan's elder sister, decided to pay a visit to her brother's home. The air outside carried the soft fragrance of blooming jasmine, but as soon as she stepped through the front door, an entirely different atmosphere greeted her. The living room was quiet, almost heavy with concern, and there, seated on the sofa, was Diem. Her slender figure sank slightly into the cushions, her complexion pale, as though the color had drained from her cheeks. Thuy paused for a moment, studying her sister-in-law in silence, and immediately sensed something unusual. Diem pressed one hand lightly against her stomach, while the other rested limply on the arm of the chair. Every now and then, her face tightened with the grimace, and she swallowed hard, fighting the familiar wave of nausea. Toan, ever the attentive husband, hovered close by, his brow furrowed with visible worry. He held a glass of warm water in his hands, leaning down to offer it to his wife with gentle insistence. "Here, try a sip," he murmured softly, his voice threaded with anxiety. "Maybe it will help settle your stomach." His every movement revealed his unease, his fear that something unseen and dangerous was stealing away Diem's strength. Thuy quietly set her bag down on the side table and walked closer, her heels tapping gently against the tiled floor. She could feel the tension in the air, thick and unspoken, like the echo of a storm that had yet to break. Her eyes moved from Toan's tight grip on the glass to Diem's pale lips, which curved into a faint smile, as though trying to reassure her husband despite her obvious discomfort. "What's wrong with her?" Thuy asked softly, though her gaze never left Diem. It wasn't a casual question, but the kind that carried both genuine concern and a sharp instinct only an older sister possessed. Toan exhaled deeply and sat down beside Diem, his hand still resting protectively on her shoulder. "She's been like this for several days now, always tired, eating less, and sometimes dizzy to the point she can barely stand. This morning she couldn't even finish breakfast. I'm worried it might be something serious." His words tumbled out quickly, as though speaking them aloud might somehow bring him closer to understanding the cause. Thuy nodded slowly, folding her arms as she considered his words. Diem shifted slightly in her seat, her hand tightening around Toan's for reassurance. "It's nothing," she whispered faintly, trying to downplay her condition, though her tremor in her voice betrayed her. "I'll be fine after some rest." But Thuy wasn't convinced. Years of watching over her younger siblings had trained her to notice what others missed, the fleeting expressions, the subtle gestures that spoke louder than words. She noticed how Diem winced at the faintest scent drifting in from the kitchen, how she pressed her lips together as if holding back a sudden wave of queasiness. It wasn't the kind of illness that struck with fever or pain. It was something quieter, more mysterious. Toan rubbed his temples and let out another sigh, his eyes clouded with worry. "He thought about taking her to the hospital," he confessed, "but she insists she's not sick. Still, I can't shake this feeling that something isn't right. What if we've overlooked the hidden condition?" Thuy leaned in closer, her eyes narrowing in curiosity as she continued to observe. She didn't reply immediately. Instead, she allowed the silence to stretch, fueling Toan's nervousness before she finally spoke in a calm but knowing tone. "Maybe it's not what you think." Her words hung in the air, heavy with suggestion, igniting a spark of uncertainty and curiosity in both Toan and Diem. Thuy's words lingered in the room like an echo, drawing both Toan and Diem into a moment of startled silence. Diem tilted her head slightly, her dark eyes widening as if to question what her sister-in-law meant. Toan, on the other hand, straightened immediately, his protective instincts sharpened. He searched Thuy's face for answers as though she carried a hidden truth he had been too blinded by worry to see. "Not what I think?" he repeated slowly, his voice uncertain. His fingers tightened around Diem's hand, unwilling to let go. Thuy gave a small smile, one that carried more reassurance than mystery, but her gaze remained steady on Diem. She had seen this pattern before, in her neighbors, in her cousins, in women whose lives had been quietly transformed without them realizing it at first. The fatigue, the sudden distaste for food, the bouts of nausea at odd hours, these were not signs of a grave illness, but of something far more delicate, far more life-changing. "Look at her carefully," Thuy said gently, motioning with the tilt of her head. The pale complexion, the way she turns her face away when certain smells drift in from the kitchen, the sudden weakness in her body. "Toan, don't you see? These are classic signs. Diem might not be sick at all. She might be expecting." The last word slipped from her lips with a deliberate softness, but its impact was nothing short of thunderous. Toan blinked rapidly, as if his mind refused to process the possibility. He turned toward Diem with an expression that hovered between disbelief and awe. "Expecting?" he murmured, almost to himself. The thought had never crossed his mind. For days he had drowned in the fear of hospitals, medical tests, and illnesses, never once imagining that her discomfort might have an entirely different origin. Diem's lips parted, but no sound came out. A flush rose faintly on her cheeks, and she instinctively lowered her gaze to her lap, avoiding both of their eyes. Her heart pounded loudly in her chest, every beat echoing the wild possibility Thuy had just suggested. Could it be true? Could her weariness and nausea be not an enemy, but a secret gift quietly taking root inside her? Toan's hand trembled as he reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind Diem's ear. His voice was thick with conflicting emotions: hope, disbelief, fear. "Diem, could that be it? Have we really?" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence, as though speaking it out loud would make it too real, too overwhelming. Thuy clapped at her stunned expressions, though there was warmth in her eyes. "You two look as if I've just told you the world is about to end. Don't be so shocked. It happens quietly, often without women realizing it at first. Many don't notice until weeks later, but from where I stand, the signs are too clear to ignore." Diem's fingers tightened around Toan's, her nails pressing lightly against his skin. She dared to lift her gaze, meeting his eyes at last. In them, she saw her own mixture of fear and wonder, mirrored perfectly. The idea was so sudden, so unplanned, that it unsettled her. And yet, buried beneath the uncertainty was a flicker of something tender, an unspoken joy that threatened to rise if only she allowed herself to believe it. Toan swallowed hard, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. If this is true," he whispered, "then everything changes." His words carried both the weight of responsibility and the spark of newfound hope. Thuy placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't let fear blind you. Instead of worrying about illnesses, perhaps it's time you considered a visit to the clinic for a different reason. A simple ultrasound will tell you more than speculation ever could. Her suggestion settled into the air like a seed planted in fertile soil, waiting to grow into certainty. Toan and Diem exchanged another glance, this one lingering, filled with the unspoken realization that life might already be writing a new chapter for them. The room seemed to hold its breath after Thuy's gentle suggestion. Toan's heart raced, pounding so loudly he could hear it in his ears. He turned to Diem, still clasping her hand, as if letting go would allow the fragile possibility to slip away. Her face was warm beneath the faint blush that had crept onto her cheeks, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of apprehension and wonder. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They were caught in the silent whirlwind of imagining a future that had never before crossed their minds. At last, Toan's voice broke through, low and trembling with emotion. "We should go tomorrow. I don't want to wait, Diem. We need to know." His words carried both urgency and tenderness, as though he was afraid of frightening her, yet desperate for certainty. Diem nodded, though slowly, as if every movement carried the weight of hesitation. The thought of an ultrasound, of hearing a doctor confirm what Thuy suspected, made her heart flutter nervously. She had never prepared for this, never allowed herself to imagine holding something so fragile, so miraculous within her. And yet, the more she thought about it, the more a quiet flame of hope began to burn inside her. Thuy, sensing the fragile vulnerability of the moment, stepped back, giving them space. "Don't be afraid," she said softly, her tone carrying the authority of an elder sister, but the warmth of a confidant. "Whatever the result, you will face it together. But I think you already know the answer in your hearts." That night passed slowly, each hour heavy with unspoken thoughts. Toan lay awake beside Diem, his mind alive with images of what might await them. Tiny hands, soft cries, the weight of a new life resting in his arms. At the same time, fear gnawed at him. What if they were wrong? What if her symptoms truly pointed to an illness? The uncertainty tormented him, but when he turned his head and saw Diem sleeping peacefully, her face lit by the faint glow of the bedside lamp, he felt a surge of protectiveness that steadied him. Whatever lay ahead, he would not let her face it alone. The next morning, the world seemed brighter, sharper, as if it too shared in their secret anticipation. Toan held Diem's hand tightly as they walked through the clinic's doors, each step echoing the weight of their emotions. The sterile smell of disinfectant filled the air, mingling with the faint murmur of other patients waiting in line. Toan felt his chest tighten, but he drew strength from Diem's soft squeeze of his hand. Inside the examination room, the doctor greeted them with a calm smile, unaware of the storm of emotions swirling between husband and wife. As Diem lay back on the bed, Toan hovered at her side, his palms sweating despite the cool air. He could not take his eyes off the monitor as the probe pressed gently against her stomach. And then it came, the faint, rhythmic flicker on the screen, accompanied by the steady, rapid sound of a heartbeat. The doctor turned the monitor toward them with a knowing smile. "Congratulations," she said warmly. "You're expecting." The words fell like a blessing, releasing the tension that had held them captive for days. Toan's eyes widened, filling with tears he didn't bother to hide. He looked at Diem, who was staring at the screen in stunned silence, her lips parted in awe. Slowly, she reached for his hand, gripping it with all the strength she had. "It's real," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We're really going to have a baby." Toan could not speak. His throat was too tight with emotion. Instead, he pressed his forehead gently against hers, closing his eyes as tears slipped free. All the fear, all the sleepless nights melted away in that single moment. What remained was something pure, fragile, and overwhelming. A new beginning, unexpected yet profoundly beautiful. Outside, waiting in the hallway, Twee caught sight of their radiant faces as they emerged from the room. She didn't need to ask. The truth was written in their eyes. With a quiet smile, she whispered to herself, "So it begins."
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Lý Tu Diem Review. Rất vui vì ngày hôm nay lại được gặp lại các bạn trong tập phim ngày hôm nay. Trong tập phim ngày hôm nay thì dưới sự gợi ý của chị Thúy là chị gái của Toàn thì Toàn và Diễm đã nghĩ đến tình huống là Diễm dạo này bị ốm, có thể là do cô đang bị thai nghén. Liệu rằng nghi ngờ của chị Thúy có thành sự thật hay không, thì Toàn sẽ quyết định đưa Diễm đi siêu âm để biết chính xác là cô có mang thai hay không. Điều đó làm cho Toàn và Diễm cảm thấy rất là hồi hộp, và vừa hồi hộp vừa lo lắng và vừa mong chờ kết quả sẽ có ở trong các tập tiếp theo, sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày vào lúc 6 giờ sáng trên kênh Lý Tử Diễm Review. Các bạn xem để biết kết quả là Diễm có mang thai hay không nhá. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại. Bye bye.